Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'd like to tell you a story. It's not a faith story this time. It's a story about an experience that I had that's a little bit weird, but I hope you find it interesting. A little over a year and a half ago, I was playing golf with my friends in Fredericktown, and one of my friends, Roger, told me that he had bad allergies ever since he moved back to Missouri, and that he was going to the ENT doctor the following day to have some allergy tests done. Well, when I went home that evening, I told Jane that I said, Roger's going to get allergy tested. I think I need to get allergy tested because I've always had really bad sinus problems, but I told her since we moved up here, maybe because of different pollen, different allergens, and things like that, maybe that's kind of why my allergies seem to be worse. I mean, having a lot of headaches, my nose is running constantly. I'm going through probably a box of Kleenex a week, or sometimes a day. I mean, it was unbelievable. But it wasn't that crazy because even living in Houston, even since when I was a little kid, I had sinus headaches and um, you know allergy problems. It's just been a lot kind of a lifelong problem that I've become used to. Well, she thought it would be a good idea, so I scheduled an appointment with the ENT doctor after I got a referral from my doctor. Made an appointment. It was a couple weeks later. So a couple weeks later, I went into his office, Dr. Roberts' office in Farmington. When I went in, he was going to just do a general exam, and then, after that, if he determined that I needed allergy tests, he was going to schedule the allergy tests. Well, he did the exam in my nose, and the first thing he noticed right away is he said, you have a terrible sinus infection. We need to get you on an antibiotic, and we need to get that that under control. But he did a further examination. He had a probe, and he went way up my nose. If you had a COVID test, you'll know what I'm talking about. I think he went past the COVID test area. Way up there. And when he reached a certain point, it was kind of like he hit something. I was like, I kind of felt it. I thought, it's hit my brain or something by how far he is up there. But he kind of looked puzzled. And when he took the probe out, he said, that really concerns me. He said, I think you may have a tumor in your nose. That didn't sound very good, but okay. So he said, you're going to need to get a CAT scan for that and come back in a couple weeks, and we need to take a look at the CAT scan. So, okay. Appointment was over, got my antibiotic, knocked out the sinus infection, no problem. Went and got a CAT scan. A couple weeks later, I go back into his office for my appointment. So when I get in there, first thing he checked, he said, oh, no sinus infection, that all looks good. He looked at the CAT scan. He said, that's really big, and that's way back up there in the furthest area of your sinus cavity up there. And he said, we're going to need to get a biopsy of that. So I said, okay, well, that's fine. So he took the probe and went way back up there again. But I have to say, he did give me a couple of localized shots up in my nose, which I didn't feel any pain that time. So he went way up in there, and I could feel him messing around way back there. I don't know how long he was trying to get a biopsy, but he pulled the thing out, the scope out, and he said, he said, I can't get a biopsy. He said, it's hard. Whatever's in there isn't soft tissue. It's hard. And so they were like, what could it be? He's like, I don't know. And so he said, well, we can do two things. He said, I can try to get a piece off of it here in the office. I can give you a couple more shots so you really won't feel much, and get a piece off of it, or I can put you in the hospital and we can put you under and take care of it there. I said, well, we're already here. I'm already numb. So, why don't you give it a try? So went back in there and started probing around. I really didn't feel much pain, but my nose started to bleed. So he called another nurse in. There was one nurse who was kind of writing everything down and giving him instruments and things, helping him with that. But this nurse came in and she had, it's kind of like a dentist thing where she had suction and she, as my nose was bleeding, she was, suctioning out my nose. But the blood that was coming out of my nose. I know it's kind of gross, but hang on, it gets grosser. So he keeps messing around in there, and then he pulls the thing back out, and he says, I can't tell what that is. He said, it looks like a piece of asphalt. And I'm like, what? The nurse who was sitting down, she was like, well, how'd you get asphalt up your nose? I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about. So as he's, getting a different instrument to stick back up there, the nurses are like, what did you stick up your nose? I mean, it's big, so did you stick like a Lincoln log up your nose when you were a kid, or Tinker Toys, or, what's up your nose? I don't know what's up my nose. So they were starting to laugh about it. I was starting to laugh about it. So he goes back up in there, starts probing around and bleeding more. And, I don't know how long this whole thing took. I mean, probably 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but it seemed like an hour or more to me. Anyway, after a little while, he pulled the thing back out and he said, I think I have it kind of loose, but it's really big. He said, you sure you want to go ahead? You want to go ahead with this, or you want to stop and we can go to the hospital, make an appointment, schedule an appointment for you to go in the hospital and do this. And I said, well, at this point, if you think you can get it out, he said, oh, I'm pretty sure I can get it out. I said, well, if you think you can get it out, let's go ahead and get it out. He said, it's going to hurt some. And I said, can you give me a couple more shots? So he gave me a couple more shots. Well, he messed with it and messed with it. Finally, it got loosened up. And I thought I remembered him saying, brace yourself, because he grabbed a hold of it and like pulling a tooth. Blood came gushing out, and the rags and the suction up my nose and everything. And he pulled it out and he showed it to me, and it looked like a piece of asphalt. But it was, I don't know, I have big hands, but I mean, it was more than the top part of my little finger. It was probably 1.5 inches or more long, and it had kind of a sharp point on it. It was as big around as my little finger is here. So it was big. And he said, it looks like asphalt, but it looks porous. And man, I wish I would have taken a picture of it. I just, I'm sitting there bleeding and I'm bewildered by the whole thing. And I just didn't even think of it. And he said, he apologized because he said he's sorry he didn't take a picture of it too. Anyway, he took it over to the sink and, washed the blood, whatever was on it, washed it off. And, we looked at it, and then he said, well, he said, I have no idea what this is. And of course, the nurses are all speculating what it is. And I said, well, it looks kind of porous. Will the stuff come off? It's got to be something in there. Will the stuff come off if you mess with it? Well, he started to mess with it in the sink, and he said, it kind of dissolved actually after a little while. And he said, okay, here's what it is. And he showed it to me. And this, so you'll know I'm telling the truth. This is, here we go. This is his hands holding what came out of my nose. I mean, they asked, we're talking about what it looked like, and I said, to me, it looks like a claw. And I'll show you. Here it is today. It's solid, and it's very solid, and it's sharp, kind of a sharp point on that one end. On the other end, it looks kind of like where the root of the claw was, or whatever it was. People have said, well, that's a tooth, part of a tooth, and I'd asked him about that, and it's not very probable that if a root would have come off from one of my teeth in my mouth, that it would have, somehow migrated all the way to the back of the top of one of my sinus cavities. What is it? How did it get up there? No idea. And trust me, I've showed it to a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of different things, a lot of different explanations, but I always come back to the same thing. Okay, it could be this or that, but why does it look like a claw? Okay. Anyway, my nose is bleeding. At that point, everybody's like, this is so weird. Everybody's laughing. I'm laughing. The nurses are laughing. The doctor's going, this is crazy, So, I get up and walk out of the office. Well, when I walk out the door into the waiting room, at that point there's a bunch of people in the waiting room, and trust me, they were all sitting there with their mouths open, their eyes were about like that. I walked out with blood rag on my face and laughing. So I went home and I told Jane the story, and Jane was like, well, no wonder you had all of those sinus problems for all those years, and no wonder you had those headaches, and you struggle with that so much. And she said, she used to complain all the time that I had bad breath, and I used to chew gum and chew mints and everything all the time because she'd always be telling me I had bad breath. But she said, I don't think that was bad breath. She said, I think it was because of the continuous infection that you had up your nose. It's a wonder that infection didn't, get in your brain or something up there. But, it's kind of crazy. Well, 2 weeks later, I went back in for a follow-up appointment, and I went into their office, and I remember walking in, their waiting room was full, and the receptionist opened the window, and she goes, Mr. Tennant, you come back here right now. So I went back in the waiting room. Both nurses and the doctor came in, and he did the examination. They're all laughing, and they're saying, what could it have been? What could it be? And they're still speculating about what it was. And before I walked out of the room I was in, I said, I got to ask you a question. And the doctor said, what? I said, was that the weirdest thing that happened in your office last week? And he looked at me and he said, that's the weirdest thing that's ever happened in my office. And they were like, yeah, that was, he said, in my practice, he said, I've taken things out of kids and adults ears, I've taken things out of their noses, I've taken things out of their throat, but I have never seen anything like that. Well, after that, I started telling the story to friends and family and showing them what came out of my nose. And I named what it is when I show people, and they go, well, what is it? I said, it's my asphalt booger claw, because it came out of something that looked like a big chunk of asphalt. It came out of my nose, and what's in it looks like a claw. So folks, that's my asphalt booger claw story. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Bye.